We are here, Safe Money Partners, coming at you from Dayton, Ohio. Is myself, Bryan and Kyle Williams up in Coldwater, Ohio. Over the last few weeks, we've talked a little bit about the stimulus package and as well as the CARES Act. We talked a little bit about the money going out to folks, touched on the fact that a lot of folks have access to employer-sponsored accounts like 401ks, 403bs. For many of them, this is a potentially once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. Along with that, many folks think, okay, if I'm maybe going to take that money, I want to know what to do with it. And so last talk, we talked a little bit more as a follow-up in mostly in regards to debt and how you might want to leverage some of your retirement dollars early to help alleviate debt. Because yes, you want those retirement accounts to grow, but ultimately retirement's about cash flow. It's about what's coming in versus what's going out. So if you're just saving and you're not paying down those debts, it could end up putting you in a worse position because maybe your debts have outpaced your savings and now you're in a worse cash flow position. But today we want to talk a little bit more on that topic and really focus today more in regards to taxes. So let me ask you, Kyle, what are some of the tax implications surrounding the CARES Act?
Well, one of the most common ones that we typically mention to a lot of our clients first is just understanding that the typical tax deadline has been moved back to July 15th. In a normal year, that's April 15th, but this year is anything but typical. So it is July 15th, unless your state has some different rules, but for most of the country, it's July 15th.
Okay. And what about the stimulus checks that most of us have received at this point?
Yeah, I think pretty much everybody should have received theirs by now. But the good news on that is that we don't have to pay taxes on that. I know originally when the bill was passed, as with any bill that's, 1,900 pages or something, there's a lot of speculation on what's in there. And some people believe that we were going to have to claim that as income for 2020, but that is not true. So fortunately, that's cash that got sent to you. Feel free to use it however you see fit, and you don't have to pay it back in taxes for next year.
Good to know. So we touched on in the last talk and briefly at the beginning of this one about the fact that a lot of folks currently have access to some of those funds inside the employer-sponsored accounts. Those are things like the 401ks and 403bs. So first question on that, how much would they be able to access?
The rules are you can access up to $100,000 or the full account value, whichever number is less.
Okay, awesome. If someone wants to do that, if they want to have access to those funds, obviously we know that if they're allowed to, they will not pay a penalty on that, but will they have to pay taxes on those dollars?
They actually have the choice to pay taxes on it. If you want to, you can take that money out and you can reinvest that tax deferred. The reason that a lot of people are looking at this as a possibility is a simple matter of control. When that money is sitting in the company 401k or 403b, you only have the 10 to maybe 18 options that they let you pick from. Whereas if you take that money out, you now have full control over what happens with that money and how it's invested. The other option is to just simply pay your taxes. And for a lot of folks that we're meeting with, when we sit down and run the numbers, it's actually the smarter play to just pay your taxes now. And none of us like to pay taxes, but I've asked a lot of folks this, and consider this, Bryan. Let's say you're a farmer and you're going to go out and plant a field full of corn. Now, you may or may not know that one kernel of corn planted in the ground is typically going to have one stalk come out, which usually will have 2 ears of corn. And those ears of corn will produce around 1,400 kernels. So if you have the option to pay the taxes on the one kernel before it gets planted or the 1,400 kernels at harvest, which do you think is smarter? So, it's just a matter of it makes a lot of sense for a lot of folks to pay your taxes now, let the money grow, and then just enjoy that money tax-free later on throughout your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that analogy. I think that's a fairly easy illustration. A lot of times people really get into the weeds when they're thinking about deferring taxes versus having tax-free money. So I think that's a pretty simple way to really think about it.
Hmm.
And one thing I will kind of add to that is if you do choose to access money from those retirement accounts and pay the taxes on it, those you have the ability to spread those taxes out over 3 years. So that's a nice additional benefit that they gave us, knowing that obviously they need tax money. So they're willing to kind of work with you a little bit on that if you are going to access those funds.
Yeah.
So, between you and I, we have a lot of conversations with folks about whether to be in a position of having tax deferred money or tax-free money for the future. And I know a lot of the folks that we talk to, and when we really try to simplify it, we use, maybe an analogy like the farmer. Most of the time they say, oh, I want to be tax-free in the future.
Hmm.
And I think, we agree that that can really make a lot of sense because the older we get, many of our tax deductions go away. And we also know due to many economic factors that our tax rates are extremely likely to be going up into the future, near and longer term future. So, if we're looking at becoming tax efficient or tax free, and that of course doesn't necessarily mean moving everything we have into a tax free position, but when we're thinking about the possibility and the options for becoming tax-free, what kind of options are available for folks to have tax-free money for the future?
There's a variety of different ways that somebody can go. The two most common options that are being chosen are Roth IRAs and cash value life insurance policies. And these accounts are very different in how they're set up, but the one thing they do have in common, one of the things they do have in common is giving you the ability to access tax-free money later on in life. And if that's your goal, it's funny, like you talked about tax deferred versus tax free. Everybody wants to do tax deferred now, but have tax free later. And unfortunately, you can't pick both. You have to pick one. So, kind of an old phrase is start with the end in mind. And if you want to end with tax free money, then you've got to do the tax free things now. But yeah, and the typical options and oftentimes the best options are Roth IRAs and cash value life insurance. And you can do one, you can do the other, or a combination. It just really matters of what your situation is and what makes sense and how does the numbers all work. So that's just a matter of sitting down with somebody that knows what they're doing and figuring that out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. And just the fact that no matter what you're doing, if it's thinking about accessing these funds, if it's thinking about what to maybe do with the money from the stimulus checks or whatever the case may be, it's always important to, like you mentioned, work with a professional who does this every day, but also to be, really, like you said, thinking about the end in mind and really thinking about what we're trying to achieve. So taking a step back and really analyzing not just that one little piece, but the other things that maybe we're doing, how are those things affected? How do those things come into play? We want things to work well together.
Yeah.
So, if you have somebody that you're working with that you like and you trust, then, hopefully this helped spark some thoughts and some questions that you can pose to them. But, keep in mind that if you don't really know where to go, you don't have somebody that you like and trust to really turn to, please reach out to us. One of the things that we've done recently, we've cut out some time in our schedule with so many people wanting to just ask a few questions here and there. We've cut out some time in our schedule to do just short 10-minute phone calls. So, if you are somebody that just wants to ask a little question here and there, you're not really sure where to go, but you'd like to talk to somebody local that you can just, kind of be personal with, then just schedule a 10-minute phone call. Let's hop on the phone and just talk a little bit about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, what kind of goals you have. And we can just talk a little bit about some thoughts for you. And, I know that we can enlighten you to some things that you didn't know before. And I know that we can always leave you in a better mood than we found you in. So I hope you take the opportunity to do that. We would love to talk to you a little bit about really your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, what's important to you, and how we may be able to partner with you in creating that success in your financial life. So thank you for joining us today. Until next time.